right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Nancy Steinhauer. I'm the principal of the Mabin School. For those of you who don't know, the Mabin School is a small JK to 6 school in central Toronto near Casa Loma with 150 students. We're 40 years old and we are known for nurturing empathy, leadership, teamwork, problem solving. Our mission is to create the next generation of original thinkers, adaptive leaders, and caring citizens. You can see them on our screen, some examples. We're a small little school with a big family feel. We're in a house, and we're very progressive, and we are committed to change making and being change makers in the world. So that's us in a nutshell. And I have the great pleasure of introducing 3 of our parents, all really interesting people and change makers themselves. So going from my left to right, I have no idea where they show up on your screen. We've got, we've got Jeffrey Orridge, who's the father of Gabriel, who's a grade 5 student at our school. And we have Jamie Campbell, who is both an alumni of our school and the father of 2 girls at our school, Reese, who's in JK, and Piper, who's in grade 1. And Lily Safrani, I can't see anymore, but I know she's there. There she is. Lily is the mother of Milan, who's in grade 4 at our school. And we're so pleased that they're here. All really interesting people, and maybe they'll get into that a little bit as they're talking about why I say that. But I'm going to start by asking them all a question, which is, Jeffrey and Jamie and Lily, why did you choose the Mabin School originally? And in what ways is the school what you expected? And what are the surprises? And maybe, Lily, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I have to admit that I had to think about this for a few minutes because I realized today at drop-off that Milan has started his 5th year at the Mabin School, which for us is an incredible accomplishment because when we came to Mabin, we had just arrived in Toronto and were really just in town for a temporary stay and had moved probably, I think we worked out 18 times by the time we moved to Toronto in about 10 years. And Milan had, this became Milan's 3rd school just as he was starting SK, so in less than 5 years. And we were visiting from Miami, but had moved from Silicon Valley. So we are quite progressive in our thinking, and when we weren't sure what we were going to do that summer, we were coming up on September, and I went for a tour of the Mabin School because a neighbor said, look at Mabin. And the short answer is, we chose the Mabin School because it felt right. We walked in the building and I was probably there for about 10 minutes. And I knew that if we started a Mabin, we probably were never going back to Miami. And this was at a moment that, as kind of Silicon Valley progressive, sometimes disruptive thinkers and doers, we were just on the heels of creating a school in Miami that was about to be approved. And when I started the tour of Mabin, I really realized and felt that Mabin seemed to be the school we were hoping to build in Miami, but 35 years later. So child-led learning, progressive in its thinking, doing things differently, the empathy curriculum and habits of mind approach just really won us over. And when Milan came home that first year in SK telling us that he was learning to manage his impulsivity, I think my husband and I were just, that was our mic drop, Michelle. That we were just like blown away. And we've really been thrilled to see how his experience at the Mabin School has unfolded, because I think the school builds, students, but also cultivates humans that will learn to really be citizens in the world. So we really love that about Mabin.
Thank you, Lily. Jeffrey, do you want to talk about how you chose the Mabin School and
Sure.
it's like what you expected and how it's different?
Yeah, just to give you some context, my son joined the Mabin School midway through grade one because he was having a very difficult time in the school where he had been. He had high anxiety, didn't like school, would literally get sick every day from one reason or another. And we weren't sure if it was school, if it was an environment, or if it was just him. But we did realize that he's a very unique individual. My son is a pajama wearing, accessory carrying individual. And we had heard that Mabin actually encourages and supports individuality. And we recognized that our son was unique in so many ways. He was not traditional. He was a nonconformist. Even at age 3 or 4, we recognized that. And the things that we had heard about Mabin have actually been true. There are a lot of schools that espouse wanting to focus on empathy and original thinking and foster executive function and creative leadership. But Mabin actually enacts that. And my son is living proof. There was no further anxiety. He feels comfortable being who he is on whatever day that may be. And Mabin has created an environment for him, along with the rest of the student body, that is particularly responsive to and supportive of creativity and originality. And so it actually has lived up to its billing. It is everything that we expected and more. And I guess the biggest compliment is the example of my son, who he hates school, but he loves Mabin. So that hasn't really changed in terms of, he would rather skip to graduation in university, but he recognizes that he has to go through this process, and there's no better place that he enjoys being than Mabin. And like I said, it's about cultivating original thought and allowing, him to be who he is without fear or trepidation or anxiety.
Now, Jamie, you are a product of the Mabin School and a father at the Mabin School. So why, well, let me ask you 2 questions. What did you appreciate most about being a student at the Mabin School? And then why did you choose it for your children?
So I'm super biased in this whole thing, and everything Jeffrey and Lily have just said is enough. There's nothing more that I need to say that anybody needs to hear other than what you guys have all heard. Look, I went to Mabin not 100 years ago, but it feels like that. And Mabin is not so different today than when I was there. It is a small school. It is a school that is everything we've talked about. It is empathetic, and it is a family, and the kids know all the staff, and the staff know all the kids. And it's a first name basis, and it's a school without pretension, and it's a school that focuses on education and doing things differently. The status quo is not something that Mabin it just isn't. Like, there are even the way that it's student-led learning, and a student's idea can become central to course. It's incredible seeing how Mabin is. And as a byproduct, I am still friends with guys that I went to Mabin with like 100 years ago, and absolutely true. And one of the guys that was in my class is a board member. Like, he and I have reconnected through Mabin. And there was no doubt when I was when my wife and I were looking at schools, and we had our daughter in the local public school, and it was fine. But I kept saying, like, we should just go look at Mabin. We should just go take a walk. And of course, as soon as you get inside the building and you feel the school, and it's a house, and the community, it's so great, and our girls are thriving. You know, they both love going to school every day. Reese has a mental breakdown every day because, of course, she has to leave at the end of the day, and it's like a whole walk home with her. I'm not going to get to go tomorrow. Don't worry about it. And it's the very fact that Mabin is creating, I think, the kind of people that we all aspire to be in terms of change makers, in terms of that, you know, kids are confident and they are empathetic and they are compassionate, and they really are the kinds of kids that we would want, not only in the schools that they will go to next, but of course, like as greater members of society. So I just love everything about it.
Thank you, Jamie. Jeffrey, what would you say is the biggest impact that the school has had on your child?
I think self-confidence. I think one of the reasons why his anxiety was eliminated is because it's a nurturing environment, and it has really fostered his self-confidence and his him feeling as though, you know, it's a safe space. And I'm not projecting this on him. This is some of the words that he's used when I ask him about his day. He says, well, you know, I felt safe today. You know, I feel comfortable there. I've got a lot of friends. And I think because he is, he's a unique individual, and I keep stressing that, I think Mabin actually supports the uniqueness. And I think, you know, his experience is not unique with his classmates, in that all of the friends of his that I happen to meet, and the people that he's in contact, whether in school or out of school, that go to Mabin, are all very individualistic and also very unique. And as Jamie said, I think these are not only the kind of people that I'm optimistic about society because of the creation and the fostering these people, but these are also the people that I want my children to be around, right? I want them to be around and learn from other kids who go to Mabin, because of the type of character that I think Mabin not just builds, but actually promotes, right? And supports.
Lily, what about you? What's the biggest impact school Mabin has had on your child?
Sure, I might say a lot of the same things as Jeffrey, and definitely to lead, I would say that Milan is just such a tremendously confident, almost 9-year-old. It's just tremendous, and I think he thrives so much in his confidence, in his sense of leadership, critical thinking, problem solving. He is really a player when he's in the room, and I think the Mabin environment has really fostered that. One of the key ideas that I really appreciate about Mabin is the way you'll talk about the 4 R's instead of the 3 R's. The reading, writing, arithmetic, and relationship. And with relationship, it's the business of each child being known. So one of the most beautiful things about Mabin is that each child is really known inside the building by so many of the teachers, or we could say even all the teachers and the leadership, and so many of the students. Milan has spent in an average year, Milan spent an incredible amount of time in extended because he loves it. He'll go early for the sports, and he'll stay late for extended because of the sports and ability to play in the gym. And he knows the children at all ages. And one of the additional things I love is his ability to integrate. On Friday, I think Mabin always has the integration between the different grade levels. And Milan, as an SK or a grade 1, is comfortable with a child 5-6 years older than him. And we've seen that when we've traveled. We travel an awful lot, and we might be halfway across the world, but there are other kids in the environment with us, and he doesn't feel different. He feels confident, and it feels normal to him to go spend time with bigger kids, and he participates. And these are some of the things that I absolutely love about his experience there.
What about you, Jamie, for your girls?
So sorry, Nancy, just rephrase the question for me.
Sorry, what's the biggest impact that Mabin's had on your girls so far?
Oh man. Well, look. So my girls are radically different. So Reese is this very precocious, self-confident young woman. Piper is a little shyer. Now, Piper, interestingly, also has autism. So it was something that we were a little worried about. And here's a really great Mabin story for you. So they're in gym, and they're doing a game. And if Piper has one rule, everything is fine. She can manage. A second rule gets added, and Piper gets flustered. Now, it was a team game, and her team wasn't winning. Now, what you would think is, as a standard practice, is you try and figure out how can we win? How can we sort of, maneuver this? And instead the approach was, look, how does a team work when one of the members is struggling with the rules? Winning now doesn't become the most important part. It's bringing a team member that is struggling along, and it really becomes like a compassionate play. And just that approach is so intrinsically Mabin, and the very fact that was the approach, that it wasn't a matter of getting Piper up to speed on the rules, but instead it was giving all of the other kids an opportunity to learn and work through a frustration of maybe not winning that game, but maybe having the opportunity to learn what it's like to have to manage when you have someone on your team that might need some support. Like, that in itself is a life lesson that I think is so incredibly Mabin, and that is pervasive through everything we see in the way that Mabin not only inwardly focuses, but also the way that Mabin approaches community activities. It's not just something Mabin says, it's something Mabin does. So for me, having both girls there, it's like the biggest win in the world, because I know that Mabin is really forming the kinds of people that I will be so proud to, one day get apartments for, and they'll live somewhere else, which is just in itself like a win at some point.
Amazing. What would your girls say about the school, Jamie?
They love going to school. Like, every day is like a great, they get to wear whatever they want to wear. They get to, it's the biggest deal. Like, Reese has just decided that she's not going to wear socks of the same color ever. They always have to be different. I am glad that she is at a school that allows that kind of self-expression to exist. I went to a school that didn't have that. It was a uniform school, and, it was very institutional, so on and so forth. I love the fact that there is a real opportunity for self-expression, and that it's not only, allowed, but encouraged. It's like, be you, be your best you. Like, that is so incredibly Mabin and so progressive and so important.
What about Gabriel?
I have to jump in. If I'm not mistaken, Jamie, on Piper's first day, she did wear a cape, red cape.
So did Reese.
She did wear. Sure, they both do.
It's a family. and Jamie, you probably did too.
Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't we all?
What would Gabriel say, Jeffrey? What would he say about the school?
I think he'd say that he loves his classmates, he loves the teachers, and he enjoys the opportunity to move while he's in school. That he's not confined to a stationary, he wouldn't say stationary setting, although he might. But I think he enjoys the freedom that he has. And it's not just the freedom to express himself with the clothes he wears and how he carries himself, but also the freedom to move while he's in school, and the change of scenery and the rotation and that there are new and interesting and exciting things to do, right? Not one day does he ever say, well, it was kind of like the same as yesterday. And that would be the stock answer from a 10-year-old, right? Well, how was your day? Oh, it was the same. But he never says that. He says, oh, well, here's what we did today, which to me is amazing, because he's become so much more of a communicator as a result of that, because he actually has content to talk about. So that's what I think he'd say. It's fun. That's what he'd say. It's fun for him.
And for the audience, you should know that the first time we met Jeffrey and his family, there was a video of Gabriel doing incredible acrobatics in his bedroom. So it's good that he likes to move. Like it all works out. Lily, what about you? What would Milan say about the school?
I will just second on the business of expression that Milan goes to school very often in some kind of a sports jersey, and I think it is one of the loveliest things to watch about this child unfold, to see what he's choosing and how he's dressing himself and what messages he's sharing and what he's relating to. And I really do love that also about the environment at Mabin, that it's so free. I'll relate a quick story from when we originally moved. When we visited the school, it must have been the very end of August. And again, we were very anchored at our school in Miami, and we thought we had our plans there. And we came to visit Mabin. Milan came with me on the tour and had a visit with a teacher for half an hour or an hour while I looked at the school. And when we left, this child that was not yet 5 spent the next series of weeks telling my husband and I love the Mabin School. Can we stay in Toronto forever? So Mabin and Toronto were not on our radar at all. And it was this really pleasant development that happened in our lives and actually contributed quite a bit to our changing countries, because we moved from the US to Canada. It was kind of a big deal, and now we're here. So that was Milan's first, probably biggest statement about Mabin, that he loved it and he wanted to stay in Toronto forever. And he repeated that for weeks and weeks and weeks once he got started. Since then, he's now in grade 4. I think Milan would say that he loves gym. Gym at Mabin is better than at other schools. He's very sure of that. He loves the sports that take place, at different parts of the day. I think the amount of movement from the standpoint of all the outdoor play that the kids have each day is also really important to him. And I think it really balances the rest of the learning, because there's the break mid-morning, there's the break at lunch, and often they're outside playing again for gym. So he would tell you he loves that. He's really enjoying the computer he has this year as a grade 4. I think it's a Mac. He's enjoying the space at 35 this year and the amount of space the class has to move around. He enjoys the neighborhood, and I think the school feels like home. I think it feels like an extension of his home, and because of that, he really thrives in the environment.
And just to explain for anyone who doesn't understand the reference to 35, we've actually moved into a second building this year to spread out. So we have one building at 50 Poplar Plains Road, and we have a second building about 15 minutes away, 15-minute walk away at 35 Prince Arthur. And so the grade 4, 5s, and 6s have taken over Prince Arthur and made it their own. Yes?
I think Milan would say he misses the main location also.
Yeah.
But he's also really happy, and I mean it's playing out really beautifully for this year. So,
yeah, it's
thank you.
A great piece of luck that we found.
Yes, it is.
Space. If the school were to be represented as a single person, what would its personality be like in only 3 words, and why? Who wants to take that one?
I'll go ahead.
I'll start.
Okay, Lily.
Should I start?
No.
You start.
I found this question to be a little challenging. I had to really think about this one. And Michelle, I mentioned to you that I was thinking about it, and where I ended up is that I would call Mabin a creative pioneer. So I would call it a pioneer. That would be like the person. Creative, flexible, adaptable. I think it's really a reflection of its growth mindset approach to being in the world, right? It's, at any given moment, the kids can be moving through the year. I suppose the school could be moving through the year, and there's a receptivity to a possibility that comes along and a willingness to explore it and let a whole theme and a thread evolve. And I think we've had so many lovely experiences in the community as well, that Mabin is here to do something beautiful for our children, but I think also to set an example in the larger community. And I know, Nancy, this is part of your vision as well. I think the school is so unique that for all the moving around we always did in the States, I don't think if we had intentionally looked for a school like Mabin, it would have been very easy to find in many major cities. And so I think Mabin is unique. It's a leader in its thinking. And so I called it a pioneer.
Nice. Jeffrey, did you have an answer?
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to preface this by saying that to everyone who's listening, Lily, Jamie, and I did not get together ahead of time and rehearse this. This is unscripted, but as I'm listening to what they're saying in the last 20 minutes or so, it is, I mean, we are echoing each other's comments. And it is uncanny to me that that we have such shared common not only experiences but perceptions of the school. So I would say, as Lily said, it is adaptable. I would also say that the personality of Mabin, it has a high emotional IQ, and I would say that it is a respectful individual, and all the things that my wife and I have tried to instill in our children in terms of a value system. I grew up in the 60s in New York City, and my parents would quote something by Muhammad Ali, who said, the service to others is the rent you pay for your space on this earth. And so both my wife and I have grown up with that kind of guiding principle, and we try to instill that in our kids. And Mabin does exactly that, and we see it constantly emerging in Gabriel. His thoughtfulness, his respect for other people, and the fact that he is adaptable, because Mabin creates an environment that adapts all the time to change. So yes, that's it.
Jamie, what about you? If you
Oh
if you
man,
were
this
calling
is
Mabin a
just an
person,
echo chamber in here. We're all, it's so true. Like, it's so true. Look, here's what I would say. I would say that, listen, we all know what the Mabin person is quite clearly. I want to say this, and I think it's really important. When we talk about Mabin as a community, and I will get to an answer, it's so interesting because the children are so highly engaged and they're so invested in the school, but so are the parents. Like, it's so easy as a parent to be hook, line, and sinker into like being involved in the school. It doesn't feel like an obligation. It doesn't feel like something I'm tasked with, where school's like, hey, can you be a member? You're like, oh, I really don't feel like doing this. The parent community is as engaged in the school as the children are, because it is so truly authentic. It just is. It's not something that Mabin says and then isn't really, there in practice, which I think happens with some schools. For the three words that I really came up with was, I think that a Mabin student or a Mabin person is empathetic. I think that they are really inquisitive of the world around them, and I think they're self-assured. And when I say self-assured, I mean Mabin allows you to be who you are in a judgment-free zone, and I think that is really key. It's not just a matter of wearing what you want to wear to school. Like, that's important. It's the fact that you can wear it without, being criticized. Like, that is not tolerated. The fact that there is open acceptance of, like, listen, you just have to be your best you, and that is good enough for everybody else in this building. And that transcends to parents, faculty, students alike. It's, you get to be your best you, and that's good enough for all of us, and we love you how you are. And then we see the empathy component of that. And then in terms of the curriculum, we see how inquisitive the students are and how the questions that they ask often form the basis of the teachings that we see, which I think just makes Mabin so Mabin.
You've all kind of touched on this, but I'll ask it anyway. How would you describe the values of the school and the values of the families in the school community? Who wants to start?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
And some of this really isn't new. I think a lot of it has been said, but I think the school is tremendously warm and an extension of home. a lot of value around problem solving, creativity, community, and impact. The key word that comes up for me at values is the business of change making, and the fact that Mabin is an Ashoka school. And I've loved to see Milan. We'll be out and about and travel and in some environment, oftentimes with big thinkers, and Milan will pop up out of nowhere, the littlest one in the room, and go, "Mama, I'm a change maker." You know, like, I'm a change maker. I'm doing this and this and this. And I think that has been such a big part of our experience there. I got to know a lot of mothers at the Rose Avenue School nearby, quite a different school. And I think so much of Mabin's beauty was on display in that partnership we've developed with that community. So those are some of the words that come up, some of the values that come up for me. But I think we're really a community, a family, and if I just circle back to the business of relationship, that fourth R, that really defines a lot of our Mabin experience.
Jeffrey, you want to add on?
Yeah, I would just say empathy is huge. I think that's a key value, and we've talked about that a lot. But I think the other thing is respect for yourself and respect for others. And I think because it encourages self-respect, once you have that, it actually bolsters you and fortifies your opportunity to respect other people. And I think that's really important. And I think particularly in this day and age, and I may sound, like I'm dating myself, and I think I'm starting to sound like my father. But I think that there is I think that respect is coming at a premium these days. Mm-hmm. And the environment that we live in, there are so many forces that are antithetical to people respecting one another and their individuality and their uniqueness, that I think this is a key attribute of Mabin, and I think that also why, like I said, I enjoy the fact that my child is surrounded by children who are very different and very unique, but share the same value of respecting each other and honoring each other's differences.
Jamie, do you want to add anything about the values of the school or the parents, the community?
The only thing I would say is that I think social responsibility is such a big part of the Mabin experience, and it's key for me. I know we see it right now. We're seeing, a lot of businesses are doing corporate social responsibility and like how they're addressing it. And it's something that, is really like an emerging theme, except that Mabin it's so amazing to see the kids really consciously care about the world around them. And there's a real focus on how are they going to contribute positively to making the world around them better, whether it be the 5 blocks, around the school, or how is Toronto going to get better, or how is Ontario going to get better, how can Canada be better, so on and so forth, how can they be better friends to each other. And I think that idea of social responsibility is really so ingrained so early, and I just think it's just a wonderful thing.
Can I ask you one more question as an alumnus, Jamie?
Yeah, sure.
And other people might want to chime in too. What one thing would you change about the school for the better if you had to choose something?
Well, it would go past grade 6, It would go right through to high school. That's how it would be, I mean, I look at Mabin and I think, imagine if you had grade 10, 11, and 12 students who were Mabin through and through, and the kind of impact that they could make in the world around them, like confident older teenagers. I mean, I think that would just be the most amazing thing in the world. So,
but
there's
what
time,
grade
Nancy. My girls are young. They're only in JK and grade 2. Like, we can move mountains here, I believe.
When you oh my gosh, Piper's in grade 2. I think I said she was in grade 1. When you graduated, did you graduate out of grade 4 or grade 6?
Grade 4.
Grade 4, because it only went to grade 4.
It only went to grade 4.
But Jerry Mabin used to talk about being fully baked but the kids were fully baked by the time they got to the end of the journey. Were you ready for the next step?
So, yeah, I think I was. I think I knew who I was. Look, here's what was hard for me. I went from Mabin into a school that was, one of the very traditional, like all male, all boy private schools, right? Which was uniformed, and you sit in rows and you call your teacher by their, Mr. and Mrs. so on and so forth. And it's very institutional. That is very different from Mabin. Part of the reason why I'm sort of anti-conformist in a lot of my ways. I don't like rules without understanding what rules are for, like this, Anyway, let's not get into my, why it didn't fit for me, because, I like everything that Mabin was promoting. And I think that in society, we're so quick to build walls and put up rules and create, structures that we don't question. And I just love the fact that Mabin sheds a lot of that, because it's not integral to learning and growing. It's much easier if you let kids self-express and let them be who they want to be, and then let them learn in a way that is self-directed and encouraged. It's just so much better.
That was a question for alumni, but Lily or Jeffrey, do you want to weigh in? If there was one thing you could change about the Mabin School, what would it be?
I'll share a funny story about Milan, who for a solid probably couple years told me often that he was going to Mabin through grade 12, like with his full confidence. Says, Mama, I'm going to grade 12. It just keeps going up, because the older they get, they end up on a higher floor. And he's like, I'm going to grade 12. And I said, are you sure? He says, yep. So he would have subscribed, Jamie. And in terms of something I would change, I'm not sure yet.
Jeffrey, what about you?
Yeah, so I agree that that if my son could stay there through grade 12 and maybe undergraduate, that would be great, because I think that's the only way he's going to go to school after grade 12. But I think candidly, what I would like to see is an increase in diversity within the school. And I think, we're fortunate to live in Toronto, where we can walk down the street and see all kinds of people who look like us and don't look like us and wear similar clothes and wear very different clothes. So, the environment of diversity is all around us, and we're fortunate that way. I would like that to be a little more reflected in Mabin. And when I talk about diversity, I think Mabin is an incredibly inclusive school. Mm-hmm. And it fosters and supports differences within people. And there is definitely diversity of thought at Mabin, which I think is key. But I would also like different cultures and different ethnicities more so to be reflected there, because it's a microcosm of life and we live in a global society. And I think, in many ways, there's so many things that are visual, and we have visual cues, and to mitigate a lot of the perceptions of differences outside in the world. If you grow up in an environment that is more diverse, then you tend to have a different perspective. So, and I can say that because I'm a product of a very non-diverse environment, because I went to collegiate school for boys in New York City, where I was one of 2 people of color in my class and probably one of 5 in the entire school. And I went to Amherst College, which was also very select and very elite. And then I went to Harvard Law School, that was probably the most number of people of color that I've been around at Harvard. So, which was not a whole lot, but it definitely, shaped my view of the world. And I think Mabin would benefit from that. And it's not just about, racial identity, but it's also about socioeconomic differences. And so people learn from other people's experiences. And I believe you are an amalgam of your experience. and your experiences are also drawn from other people. So that's what I would say.
And we agree with you, Jeffrey, and we hope we'll have many more conversations about that, because we believe that when the learners are more diverse, the learning is more diverse. It's richer. So thank you for opening that up, and we will continue to explore ways that we can attract people who don't know about us yet.
Right.
Do we have questions from the audience, Michelle?
Well, the chat is open, but not yet. But I would say it's a great opportunity. We have these current parents.
If not, I can ask more questions.
Okay. I don't see one yet, but do feel free to put a question in the chat if you're wondering about something, or even unmute yourself and jump in.
Because we're a small group, right?
We're a small group.
Yeah, jump right in.
And if not, Nancy has.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
All right. Here's a question for you. And I'd like you to answer this from the perspective of having gone to the school, Jamie. You ready?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
What would families find most surprising about the school?
I think what is surprising to me is how quickly kids learn to love going to school. Like it doesn't take a long time. I think that as parents, we're all quite accustomed to the idea of, oh, it's Monday, I don't really feel like going to school. And, you know, my kids went through that when we were at another school before Mabin. And it's amazing how much the kids love going to school. Like it really is such a rich experience for them. Like here's an example. So we get an email the other night from Reese's teachers that she has to go and find a really good stick. She's got to find a good stick. So my wife is in the park across the street from us trying to find what a good stick is, right? Which actually made her Instagram was interesting with her hunting ground for this stick. So she finds a whole collection of sticks, and then Reese has to pick one this morning and then takes it to school. And now we have it, and it's all decorated, and it's got like a little flag on it. And it's such a cool project, right? Reese had a huge Wednesday at Mabin. Like this is the kind of stuff that the kids do that is, it's such a rich learning experience. How can you not want to go to school when this is how your day is? And it's just amazing to me how quickly Mabin converts the kids from, you know, the very idea that school shouldn't be loved like it's loved. They love going. It's the most amazing thing.
Anybody else want to talk about surprises? I know we have some questions we could answer.
Do, but
Can we go there?
any surprises? I did enjoy the stick story, Jamie.
Yes, and I do have my own stick here. There's a question here about how does Mabin accommodate students who are ahead of their grade level? For example, a second grader who can do fourth grade math or can read at a fourth grade level. And I'll start with that one. So if a student is ahead academically, does anybody have anything to say about that? I mean, I can answer, but
Sure. I might share from my experience. One of the things that I enjoy at Mabin is that I'm able to have a dialogue with Milan's teacher as needed. So if I see Milan needs more, I can reach out to the teacher, and oftentimes we'll be met with a very open mind. If Milan needs more, then they can feed him more material, or they're aware, right? They're following the child, and are part of the goal with the student-led learning is really to respond to what that child needs.
And then there's a question about adding to that, how does the school accommodate kids who are struggling with particular subjects or skills? Jamie, you mentioned about your daughter having autism. How has the school helped to accommodate her needs?
I mean, Mabin's amazing, right? So it was a concern for us. And like as parents, I'm not pushing my daughter to be at any level other than the level that she needs to be at right now. So we had a parent-teacher conference just last week, and we sort of said, Piper's in grade 2. We know she's not quite up to grade 2 in terms of her reading and mathematics and whatever. And they said, listen, Piper is doing really well. Like, she's hitting the milestones that she needs to hit in the way that she needs to hit them. And Piper's day is adapted to meet her needs. So right now, there's less of a focus on her getting, the nuances of math down, but really Piper's social skills have become so much better for her, which was a struggle. Like, socializing is really hard for, kids who have autism. Mabin has allowed her to very comfortably play with others. And because Mabin is driven by empathy and inclusivity, like, what an amazing environment. So at no point do we ever feel that there is this undue pressure on her to move any faster than she needs to. Of course, like, she is encouraged and pushed. That's of course really important. But we feel really comfortable that the faculty are all so highly trained. They are really such excellent, passionate educators, and they're all just like so incredibly bright and so accomplished in their own rights. Like, there isn't anybody underqualified who is on the Mabin faculty. So it's knowing that your children are with people that really understand early childhood education and really understand how to teach a child that is perhaps struggling or is perhaps, behind in a certain area, but allowing them to catch up in a way that gives them self-confidence and everything else. It's not a concern for us.
It is. Let me chime in because my son has academic challenges, and he learns in a very different way. The thing about Mabin is they took the time to customize programs, not just during the school year, but in the off season, during the summer, to help him along. And the amount of personal attention was incredible. It was almost as if he was being had individual tutors, not one tutor. All of his teachers helped customize programs for him, which I thought was incredible. I think the I guess overarching theme is that I believe Mabin meets children where they are academically. They don't have to get to where Mabin is. Mabin meets them where they are and supports them where they are. And I want to dispel any notion that because Mabin emphasizes the holistic child and empathy and respect and leadership, that it is anything less than academically excellent. You can find any and every level of academic rigor that you want there. So I want to dispel that notion, because I think one of the surprises that I may have had coming from a very traditional educational background is that, well, Mabin, because they promote all these soft skills, that in some way the academic rigor is lessened. They are not mutually exclusive at Mabin. You have the best of both worlds and an incredible balance.
That kind of leads into this question, which is, can you explain what student-led learning looks like in the classroom? So I'm wondering, someone who's been at the school for a few years and is, last year was strange because it got interrupted, but usually what happens in a classroom is an inquiry emerges based on the questions and the interests of the students. Sometimes there's more than one, but usually there's like one deep inquiry. And towards the end of the year, the students present their learning in some way to their parents. And I'm just wondering, thinking back to, again, last year was atypical because of COVID, but maybe 2 years ago, could someone, talk about that experience of seeing the culmination of learning towards the end of the year? Lily, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, I can share from 2 years ago. Milan was in grade 2.
Yeah.
And his class did a very large extended study of ancient Egypt and a lot of the different gods and the language and the writing. And this was really a learning unit that went on for many months, and was interesting to see how, I'm sure there were different conversations in the classroom. I obviously wasn't privy to, but there were different angles that became explorations and became sources of research and projects that the kids worked on. So Milan studied the god that he was given to focus on was Ra, and he did a lot of study around that, research, writing. Other children had other gods. Milan came home with a lot of excitement around writing hieroglyphics, that, you know, they must have had conversations in class and certain worksheets or interactions with it in class, and he would come home and then look it up and practice it and explain it to me, and it was very alive for him. And it was a lovely unit because we have student-led conferences about, what, 3/4 of the way into the year?
Usually end of February, beginning of March.
Okay, so at that moment in the year, this opportunity where the parents are invited in to have their child walk them through the different work they've been producing that year, their different learnings, writing projects, you know, writing, reading, you know, art on the wall. It's a very kind of full body experience almost, right? Where the child takes you through their learning. The ancient Egypt theme was very big in that moment. And then the final culmination was at the end of the year, where we came in and the children actually did a big performance with music and costumes, dressed as their different gods, with a whole story that they told. And it was 2 years ago, so I don't remember all the detail, but it was, this study came to life at the end of the year, and it was like a culmination, and one could see how deep it had gone and how many different angles they had explored this subject matter from.
And was that the year they mummified a chicken?
That was the year they mummified a chicken. There
Okay.
you go. We talked a lot about mummifying.
And I'm not kidding. It's
No.
we could smell it all over the building. They
And
mummified that chicken.
My office was across the hall, and we learned that it really smells if you don't do it. I was also involved in the inquiry.
Milan asked often when we went food shopping if we could buy a chicken to mummify it, and I said, I don't think so.
Yes,
But
and I
it's-
still remember the day they were out on the gym roof, and the teachers were dressed as Egyptian gods,
Yes.
and they all had different roles to play, including there were wailers, and there were people who held the stretcher that held the chicken, and
It
different
was a
people.
funeral. A funeral.
It was a
procession.
funeral, right?
It was a funeral.
Yes, it was.
The
that was
costumes were beautiful. They had,
Yeah.
some had headdresses, they had belts, they had, you know, they
and of
really,
course, they'd made them all themselves.
they were beautiful. They had necklaces with beads. I mean, they really embodied their learning, and it was, you know, the learning from a book and from the classic mediums truly brought to life. And I think they loved it.
And I guess one thing that's special about Mabin is you don't know in September what you're going to be learning by June, because the teachers, you know, we know that they're going to learn certain skills along the way, but the content is really determined in large part by the students and their questions. And so one year it's Egyptian mythology and mummies, and another year it's learning about being an astronaut and going to space, and another year you know, it's about inventing. So it just kind of depends what's going on. There's a question here about exposure to technology. Does anybody want to speak to that? We have technology. It's very strange to answer that question in the middle of COVID and the threat of moving remote at any second, because we are using technology much more in the last 6 months than we usually would. But we were experimenting with a screenless kindergarten until COVID hit. And that was great because we knew that kids benefited from, you know, having those concrete experiences. But now that COVID's hit, actually the kids are quite adept at moving on and off technology as needed, as a communication tool and as a way of connecting ourselves to each other. So, okay, one last question.
I like
Do you know
one. Do you see the last question about graduating students?
that's the one I was going to go to. Is that okay?
Yeah, I like it.
I'll ask you this, and if you don't know the answer, I can answer it. Do you know how the graduating students adapt to the change from a small and individualistic school to a larger school, both academically and socially?
Is that for
None
me
of
to
you
answer?
are there yet, but except Jamie, you've been through it.
Yeah, I mean, as one who has gone through it, I will say that Mabin certainly gave me a lot of the skills that I needed to go into the next school that I was going into. I struggled with the formality of a school that was suddenly uniformed and everything else, but I will say that all of the things that I learned at Mabin are things that I've carried through to everything I've done throughout my life ever since. Like, it's a focus on, you know, friendships, the ability to work collaboratively with others in a classroom, the ability to, be creative and to think differently. All of these skills certainly were important. And, you know, as Jeffrey said, like, the academics are really important. I certainly noticed that when I was going into grade 5, that I was really comfortable with the workload. It wasn't overwhelming. I did not feel behind. In many ways, I felt like, oh, this is not as challenging for me as some of my cohorts were at the same point in time, which I think is, like, really truly amazing. And I think that's something that's often heard from kids that are graduating, that they go into their next school really capable and really able to take on the tasks that are ahead of them, and they're, like, really very equipped and across a myriad of categories.
That's true. I mean, we know that we do one standardized test a year, and we know our kids are well above grade level when they leave, for the most part. We have room for kids who aren't, but most of the kids are well above grade level. And we know that they do well at a whole variety of different schools. Okay, this is the last question. This is from a parent who has twin girls. And she says, I'm wondering how you feel about the small class sizes and one class per grade. I went to a small school growing up and loved a small community. Given that I will have siblings in the same class, I'm wondering how your experience have been socially in a small setting. So any thoughts about that?
I have really loved the smaller environment of Mabin. We also came from a school in Miami that at times even had smaller classes than Mabin, because it was one class per grade as we build the elementary school. I think there's for sure pluses and minuses. I really appreciate that all the kids really know each other. And I think having a child that started as young as SK, I was also able to meet all the parents, and those parents really became part of my community. And I knew the parents and I knew the children, and it really facilitated our integration into this community, and in our case also our integration into the city. We do have a set of twins in our class, and they seem to thrive and really enjoy it. And I know that mom well, and she, you know, keeps an eye on both of her kids, but her kids are at all the activities. And from my experience, it's been positive. Where I have had moments as the kids get bigger, and sometimes the friendship shift a little bit from all the children being in one class to really gravitating towards a certain segment where they feel closer, you know, within certain children. That, you know, there are moments where I wonder, you know, how do I complement Milan's experience, right? So I think that's really happened in two different ways. One was in his ability to know more children in the school, in the grades above him and below. Like, I think that has broadened his social experience. And in terms of play, whether it's really comes up for us more outside of school, we have done what we can also just to be involved in our neighborhood. And I think that becomes an area where his play and his social circle extends. I think sometimes with smaller class sizes, maybe we have to do a little extra effort to augment the children's experience outside of school. But I think we also have on the plus side the sense of community and really knowing the different kids and even the parents. That really is an asset as well.
Anybody want to add anything to that?
Look, Lily has said everything that I was going to say. So once again, thank you for providing the script for me, Lily, but it wasn't necessary. But no, it is true. It really is. I mean, I think that, because of the class sizes and because of there's an intimacy in the school, which I think is extraordinarily supportive. But I also think that kids, being kids, they will find their own set of cohorts within the set of cohorts, and that will change, right? And what I like about Mabin is there are no ostensible restrictions to that. There are children in grade 2 who interact with grade 5, and those in a leadership role in grade 3 kind of, in a way, mentor those children in grade 1. So I like how there is a fluidity and an integration, and the barriers are very low in terms of that kind of interaction. And you can have your group of friends as expansive or as narrow as you decide. And my son has ranged from having one best friend to having 10 best friends within a week, right? So.
It's true. I mean, I always liken it to siblings. You have one group of kids that you have to learn to get along with, even when sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's easy. And Jamie, just as an alumnus, you were talking about the fact that you have some friends who go back to those days at the Mabin School. Like, what would you say about being in that small environment and being confined in a way to a very limited group of kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, as kids, we don't know what 30 kids in a classroom feels like when we're 15 in a room. All we know is that everybody in that room is friendly and is, at the very least, kind and encouraging in one another. And like, that's really the most important thing. And, when I went on to a school that was much larger class sizes, like, I didn't struggle to make friends because I just went up and started introducing myself to people. Like, it was just like, it was a non-starter. I didn't have to think about it. It wasn't a forced exercise for me because Mabin had sort of taught me that that's just how we do. And I think that it's just so nice to see. And I think that the small class size allows so much of the dynamic interworking with one another in small groups on projects. All of that is so nice to see. And I think that it really does foster teamwork, and that idea of working collectively towards common goals, which is just so nice to see in a classroom setting.
And I think that's all the time we have. Am I right, Michelle?
It's true. It's
true. I don't want to go, though. I really like talking to these people. We are so lucky to have had Jeffrey Orridge and Jamie Campbell and Lily Safrani with us tonight. 3 fantastic parents among many wonderful parents at the Mabin School. Such an honor to hear your thoughts. And I believe this is all being recorded, so I will be watching it again to learn from what you've said. And thank you so much for taking the time tonight and for your commitment to the school. It's because we have such thoughtful, such thoughtful, bright, creative people, articulate people sending their kids to our school, that we can do the creative and progressive and kind of wacky things that we do, because you appreciate the fact that we do things a little bit differently. So thank you, and good night to everybody. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we hope to see you again soon.